Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Back again from Florida, great International Expo there in Tampa. And I got asked a few times where my hat was. I wasn't representing Texas well without this hat, but this thing weighs a ton. And I'd have to pay extra money. I made the mistake of flying Spirit one way out there. Luckily, I had United coming back. I was warned about Spirit, and now I see why. They would have probably charged me $50 to bring this hat on there. They charge for literally everything. And you pay for Wi-Fi, it doesn't even work. So, guys, don't fly Spirit. Anyway, so I'm back. And I gave you one little synopsis already on my favorite track. I'm going to have more once I talk with Doug, who's curating a list for me based on things we heard in each room, some reference tracks to use, and I'll create a playlist on Qobuz to follow up on that video. But today I wanted to get into my best ofs. Now, I did have wrap-ups at the end of each day and then feedback from Dave and Doug and others. So this is more accentuating those. There may be some repeats, but I also wanted to get more in depth with this video now that I'm in a more comfortable environment and curate something a little better for you. I usually do this off the cuff, but I've given it some more thought. And what I wanted to do is break it up into 3 buckets because I got so many things to mention with this show. There were so many high quality rooms, so many things that were noteworthy that if you didn't watch every single video, you might have missed some things. So this will be a good synopsis in a way that if you hear these brand names and you didn't watch my specific video on it, then you may want to go back and see in more detail those rooms that I mentioned here. So I wanted to start off with one of the themes of this show was being surprised by quite a few brands. You know, having my expectations going in versus coming out were totally different, or at least much higher than I thought. So I wanted to do the first bucket of my review of most surprising from before I walked in and when I came out. And number 1 at the top of my list, and coincidentally, this is my favorite room at the show for a variety of reasons, but it's the Joseph Audio with the Joseph Audio Pulsars. And man, if you would have told me that I would have gone into any show, much less this show, going into a Jeff Joseph room, and instead of seeing analog tape or any analog playback, I would have seen video on a Apple TV with playing Tiny Desk concerts on YouTube, I would have bet you $1 million, probably everything I own, that I would win that bet. No way in hell that would ever happen. Sure enough, that's what I saw. And I had to say that, give major props, because if you're a longtime subscriber, you'll know that having video content and using your system for video content, YouTube, me building my own servers, I have videos on that, why that's important. Because so few servers even give you that ability. Hi-Fi Rose being one of the few. This is a big tenet of my channel. One of the major things that I do this channel for is showcase to people what I've learned over the years that really has enhanced my enjoyment. And to see that in a room at a show from a long-time vinyl, analog tape purist, thumbs up. You know, then on top of that, those Joseph Audio Pulsars were amazing, under $10,000. And you say, oh, it's still $9,000 for a bookshelf. Guys, you have to sometimes look past just size and even your intuition. Yes, it doesn't have that lowest octave. When we played James Blake, Limit to Your Love, even though it didn't have that lowest octave that I get here in my room, and even in another room where we played it, where it was actually busting ribs and breaking windows, everything that it presented was controlled, detailed, the pitch definition, everything was so pleasurable that I actually enjoyed it, even without that last octave, more than the other room with, you know, just resonating everything in the room, which is cool, and that happens a lot with that track. But you have to be more sophisticated when you're looking at speakers and choosing a speaker for your room and the type of music you listen to. The Joseph Audio Pulsars are going to be the optimal choice for a lot of people, even in cost no object budgets. And I'll tell you why. One thing I did after that show, because I was so impressed with its bass performance, not just the fact that it went pretty low, but the pitch definition and the detail and the composure it had, as well as everything up on top, and also his asymmetric infinite slope crossover. I don't want to get in the weeds there, but that's exactly what I do with my crossovers when my subs go to my mains. Not the same exact thing because he's doing it from his woofer to his tweeter, but basically asymmetric crossovers, steep roll-offs of woofers before handing off. I'm a believer in what he's doing there, and it works really well and allows him to use different materials for the woofer than otherwise would be the optimal choice. But without getting into the weeds there, I went and looked at the measurements. Actually, Stereophile had done measurements and review of the Joseph Audio Pulsars, and coincidentally, it was, I think, in Michael Fremer's room. Maybe I'll pop up the measurements. I think it was Fremer's room. They posted in-room measurements from the Joseph Audio Pulsars, and I think it was Fremer's room. Yeah, and because I looked at other in-room measurements of megadollar speakers in Fremer's room, the von Schweikerts and the Wilson Audios that he uses as a reference. And what you'll notice, and maybe I'll pop them up if I can grab them, the bigger ones, the megadollar ones, actually create a whole lot of low frequency energy in his room. Now, he enjoys it. He loves his room, and he's not a DSP guy. I doubt he'll ever change, try to address that. And if he enjoys it the way it is, that's fine. But for somebody that may not like the frequency response that he's getting with those megadollar speakers, if it was me, I would choose the Joseph Audio Pulsars, what his in-room response was, and add a swarm subwoofer system. I could address that a lot easier than taking those megadollar speakers, which are kind of overloading the room, and trying to retrofit it to my taste by either putting huge bass traps or, having to digitize vinyl and do some kind of stuff with crossover points, roll-offs, and stuff like that. I would take, in his room, based on what I saw, those Joseph Audio Pulsars. And for a lot of people, and subs, and for a lot of people, they overlook that. They want to get the big, grandiose speakers, and sometimes those are not loading the room in the right spot with bass, and then you're limited on top of that if you don't have other subs and you don't have any DSP to help address that. So don't think primitively about cost no object budget, having it megadollar big speakers. Sometimes a speaker like that Joseph Audio Pulsar is all you need, then combine it with a sub. And that would definitely be, in my opinion, give you higher level of performance or easier to make to your room than sometimes jimmy rigging a big speaker into a small room. So that one takes my best of the show from surprise, delta going in and out. I've never would have thought that in a million years. And then the actual performance was so real. The source material was not the fact it was a YouTube did not come through to anybody that we were in the room. We went twice. It was just high level, extremely good. Nothing to fault, certainly up above that last octave of bass. So kudos to Jeff on that. And they win best of the show pretty easily from me on those metrics. Now, what other ones gave me a big surprise? Well, this one kind of surprised me, even though I was surprised last year. Soundfield Audio, he's actually one of the sponsors of the show and located down there in Tampa, and one of the first rooms I've gone to now 2 years in a row. And he does something innovative with his cardioid bass, and then he has DSP, and then he has the ability to swap in and out rear-firing tweeters, rear-firing drivers, not just tweeters, I think. And it's very impressive when he does the A/B. And for different types of music, you can see where you might choose one or the other. And that's the kind of things I like with a speaker, that you're not roped into whatever you buy. You got to only concentrate on certain type of material being the best for that speaker. Here, you can address different things in your room or your music taste with some variability, and with that innovative cardioid bass and with that DSP. So it's always been impressive. The bass is a little bit different than I'm used to, but again, it's full, it's really rich. Everything about it was pleasant and just huge, and the speakers disappeared, even on any of the settings he chose. So I give that room thumbs up. I did see him in another room, and I did have a video on it, but they were playing a song that's blocked by YouTube. So unfortunately, that video is not out there. But again, kudos to Soundfield again this year. One of those under the radar brands that people should be looking at more. Another one that was a surprise, one I never had seen before or heard, it was the Claris's room with the block audio in the bigger room. I saw the smaller one as well. The one that impressed me the most was the bigger ones. They're kind of the Apogee knockoff looking speakers, but I think they're much more friendly to impedances now, unlike the old Apogees, which required, mega power and a very stable amp into 1 ohm, which very few were capable of doing. Now you're getting some of that similar open baffle presentation, an extremely detailed full range package that hard to complain about. And it's another lesson though, when I first went in the first time, I didn't get the sweet spot I think is good, or the song wasn't as great, so it didn't resonate a lot with me. But then when I went in the second time and we got a good song and it really showcased that speaker in that room, elevated it. And that's another takeaway I want to make sure I get across to you early on here in my review. A lot of this feedback I'm giving you does depend on the volume they're playing at the time, the noise floor in the room, the type of material, there's so many, and where I'm sitting, there's so many variables that can instantly change. And I can remark in one room, I think I even mentioned this, when I was standing up, I was not very impressed with the sound at all, but I knew, don't make a judgment standing up in the corner. Wait till you get in the sweet spot, totally different. And even standing up in the middle changed once I got in the sweet spot, livened up everything. Another room, I asked them to turn it up a little bit. Instantly, the whole presentation came alive. So there's a lot of variables that go into it. Don't fall for these primitive reviews that are just knee-jerk based on immediately ascribing everything to the gear name and not all these other factors that can influence your opinion. Make sure you try to take these into account as well if you're at a show. Don't always just blame the gear. Another one that surprised me, and I've seen at many, many shows, so the Delta here was more of, I know it's a good room, but was even better this time than I remember, was the Border Patrol Volti Triode Labs room. We stayed in there quite a while. They were playing material that was friendly to that type of system, but kudos to them, it delivered. It was very good, and again had us sitting in there for multiple songs, which is another takeaway. If you want to stay in the room, you want to listen to multiple songs, you're not kind of tired or not interested, those are kind of subliminal cues that you want to pay attention to. And so that room gets my thumbs up this year for a higher delta than I thought going in. Another one that really blew me away from going in to coming out was Audio Note. And again, they have usually good rooms, but their speakers are put in the corner, too small drivers, excessive price tags have always kind of been, I like them, respect the brand, what they're doing is unique, they have their fan base. But for me, it just never resonated at a super high level. But this time when I went into the room, I was kind of blown away that how well those speakers in the corner, just 2 drivers, did with that particular material. Again, if we play Cardi B, if we play, James Blake, Limit Your Love, maybe that would show other warts in that system. But for what they were playing at that time and my delta of what I expected going in and what I came out with, that was a phenomenal sound, probably among the top 3, matching the song, the volume, me in the sweet spot, what I heard, takeaways, best things I heard at the show was that instance. And so my video captured that. In fact, Doug actually bought that album. It was such a good reference track, which again is kind of part of the equation. He bought that album like within an hour after we left that room. So check out that video if you didn't see it. Another one that surprised me is in the budget realm. We went into a whole floor that second day. I think it was the 10th floor, budget room after budget room after budget room. And when I say budget room, we're not talking under 1,000. We're talking about, modest budgets for the entire system, under 10,000 or even under 5,000 in some cases. And the Q acoustics and unison research, man, you're talking about high level performance, really great looks. You're not sacrificing the eye candy aspect that sometimes you get with the mega dollar gear. That stuff looked great and performed really at a high level. So again, that was a big delta for me of what I expected going in and what I got coming out. Another one, the Eminent Technology. I hadn't seen them in forever at shows. I can't even remember, but I do remember over 20 plus years ago seeing that propeller sub at CES. But this is when they were doing Alexis Park. Not even the fancy stuff. It was never in the fancy areas of CES, and being lusting after that stuff just from a cool basis. But then when you learn what it does, that propeller sub, it's just next level in terms of no competition for what it does. And now it's elevated to the top of my list of next things I'm going to put in my system at some point. I just got to figure out where I would put it, how it would integrate with 2 other subs. It's kind of like a sub for your sub, because it goes from like down to 5 hertz or 1 hertz. It's meant to operate from 20 hertz down there. So it's almost like how a super tweeter accentuates a tweeter. This is something that accentuates your subs. And so anyway, that wasn't what was focused on in the room. What was focused in on the room was his new prototype speaker, kind of a line array, line source with basically base array towers. And that's a great combination because that'll allow you to move those base modules maybe to where you want. And he's using DSP. He had a mic in there. If you recall, I asked about that. Actually, Fremer was in there at the same time. My whole posse was in there at the same time. You saw all the guys from the show that I knew were all in that room at the same time. And I think everybody was impressed. 2 people were ready to buy it. Dave, who has a great system, realized that Bruce Thigpen, who makes the Eminent Technology stuff, made drivers for his VMPS, and everything he was hearing was resonating with him in terms of what he's used to in his home. And so this could be the next iteration of the upgrade for him. And then another one of my subscribers, Jonathan, who was walking along with us for a lot of the show, he was ready to buy that as well. $15,000. And so you get reference level, full range, line source, plus the amps, plus the DSP. That's a very attractive price, performance ratio, and pedigree, open baffle. I can see a lot of people buying that when it comes to market. For me, it wasn't quite there yet, sound quality wise, to the nth degree, but you could easily sniff the potential. Nothing was wrong other than I thought the bass wasn't that great. But then I learned that he was just using off-the-shelf drivers and put it in a cabinet real quick for the show purposes. Once he has a chance to fine-tune that and it gets his thumbs up for being a ready-made product, it was a prototype at the show, I think it's going to be even better. But as is, it was impressing almost everybody. It definitely impressed me. But the other surprise in that room that I never would have thought was that guitar amp. You've got to see that video just for that purpose. I think I did a separate video just for that guitar speaker. Sorry, not guitar amp. A guitar speaker. Riveting to hear him talk about that. And again, he's one of those innovators in the hobby that thinks outside the box, the kind of guys I like to share with you, because a lot of the mainstream press doesn't even ask questions, doesn't even pay attention to these things. These are the guys that really are dedicated to industry first, innovation, R&D, performance, and marketing is almost a secondary thing to them. In fact, Bruce was so shy, he didn't even want to be on camera for a lot of these things. But trust me, I'm going to give him props and give him some coverage, especially when I eventually get his sub. But that speaker is one to keep an eye on for sure when that comes out already. He's in Tallahassee. I think you could probably go take a listen to it if you're interested. Now, another one that gave me a lot of delta going in and out was Triangle. Triangle's a good speaker company, one that's got a lot of different models, but I was super impressed with the quality of finish, the high-end look to it, and then sitting down, the sound. But then the other thing that kind of pushed it over the edge and put it into my surprise category was seeing Electro Companion. Now, that's a brand that if you haven't been in the hobby for a long time, you may not recognize, but it used to be everywhere in terms of best digital products. It used to be Electro Companion and Audio Arrow providing all the CD players back in the day, and they were using this anagram DAC chip. And you'll see in my interview with him, I talked about that, because back in the day, those CD players were phenomenal. It kind of parlays in what I talked about in my Stax DAC that I got from my headphone rig. The guys back then had DAC chips that arguably were better than what you have today. And the companies that were utilizing them properly were getting extremely high level performance that had no compromises to vinyl in the day. And Electrocompanion was one of them doing it right. And I talked about it. It's got the same pedigree. They've been in business forever. That amp at the price tag for a cost no object amp, that was a pretty high value, in the $20,000 range for all that power and pedigree of Electrocompanion, plus their digital products. Again, mating it with the triangle. Sounded great, high delta going in. Didn't expect to spend all that time and get that interview and hear all about Electrocompanion. Definitely check out those videos if you're not familiar with that. Another one that surprised me, never saw before, was this indoor-outdoor speaker by Coastal Sources. And it's a line source, which is one of my favorites. Marine grade drivers that can be outdoors, and he walked through how you maintain them. And then he's got the boxes to keep your electronics all airtight. That is a very impressive system, whether you're indoors or outdoors. High level sound. That this is a brand that usually shows up at CEDIA and pro audio installation type vendors, but decided to demo at Audiophile show, and I was impressed. Color me impressed. For an outdoor speaker, that would be the top of my list. If you got cost no object budgets for your outdoor, this is the company I would look at. So kudos to them. Now, I'm going to transition into the brands that didn't give me a whole lot of surprise, because I had super high expectations going in, but they met those expectations and delivered, world-class sound that you can expect at a show. I mean, listen, none of them made me, want to sell these in my room when I hear in my room, because I have so many advantages here. But in terms of what they could deliver in the environment that they were given in such a short time, they delivered top-notch performance. And if given the same level of advantages I have here, could meet or exceed what I already have. And that's what I try to sniff for, is those kind of potentials. And so the brands that met all my expectations and did a great job of high-level performance, as usual, the high-end by Osroom, the Lionshade speakers with the plasma tweeter. What was interesting is that he's carrying that new Syn power distributor. A little pricey, but looked pretty impressive. At least the smell test, it was very impressive in my first look at it. And his cable line, the Albedo, the monocrystal one, that one was also impressive. Two new things that he's added to the line. So thumbs up to that room, meeting my expectations and delivering high-level performance. Falcon, LS35A pedigree, British speaker. That's another one that you expect a certain level of performance, and it did meet it. And just reminded me why so many people lust after that sound and are totally happy with that level of cabinet design, and how they approach speaker design totally different in a lot of ways that resonates with human hearing. So kudos to them. The MoFi Source Point. I mean, has any speaker created as much love and hate under $5,000? That tells you something. A lot of times you can tell a lot by how much haters come out for a speaker that's under $5,000. That tells you that they're doing something right, guys. Read between the lines, okay? That speaker, again, impressed for the first time. Several people at the show didn't hear it at Capital Audio Fest. Doug heard it. Dave heard it. Everybody was impressed by that, certainly at that price point. But then when you even benchmark it at much higher price points, you're getting a lot of speaker. And the way you set it up, depending on how you tow it in, can get you, different tonal balances. It's a versatile speaker. Another kudos to them was the room treatments. And I mentioned this in the video. They had these folding panel room treatments that were strategically placed. And I tell you what, guys, I would look into those because those things were impressive and very helpful. Doing my own room, redoing it, changing things around, as you can see, for the Bach and getting now even more precise measurements in my ear, I can tell you guys, little changes in room treatments can go a long way to things translatable to your ears, both measurable and audible. So kudos to them on setup in the room as well. Another one that just empirically I went in with high expectations, but certainly met it, if not exceeded it, was the Magico MSB room. Again, they picked a track by Christian McBride, which is audiophile friendly, but did it deliver? Huh. It was amazing sounding. And it's hard to imagine any system doing it much better. So again, kudos, Magico, MSB. That was an excellent sound in that room, the time I had in there. Obviously, Acora with their new speaker. The presentation I did, well, I didn't do it. I filmed the presentation that Isaac and Jacques and Kevin with VAC did, was among the best presentations I've ever done, filmed at a show. And they did it off the cuff. But because they're so passionate about their products, and for good reason, it all comes across in their passion and their presentation. And so all those brands deserve kudos, because it's not just the sound of the speakers. Are many people going to buy that speaker? Probably not at $200,000. Are many people going to even buy that speaker, put it in a room like that? Almost none. So kudos to them for not only delivering a speaker, showcasing a speaker that, you know, is out of the budget of most people, and in a room that is not practical for most people, and no buyer would probably put it in that, but they were able to deliver great performance, especially if you got the front row middle. That was where I found the magic, because in many ways it reminded me of what I get at home. Even with the Bach, it didn't have a whole lot of crosstalk because the room was so big and they had the speakers facing forward so that they weren't aimed, and you didn't have crosstalk like you normally have that the Bach helps you get rid of. You got a very three-dimensional image and a very immersive experience that if you got that seat, I think you would have got a totally different impression than if you sat further back. They had labels on each chair to kind of tell you about your experience. So, but they also showed me on the first night, we played up to 120 something decibels, showing me for my friends that can afford that speaker, that speaker won't be blown like others that are a little more fragile. And they even made the VAC amps kind of crap out at one point. But the power that was coming out of that port, those curtains 10 feet away, over 10 feet away, I swear, were blowing like a leaf blower was hitting them when we were playing some of those Cardi B tracks and Waukesha. Fun. I give them a lot of credit. They'll play whatever. They won't blow up, and they can go in any room, sound great, as long as you pay somewhat attention to where you're sitting and calibrate your expectations for that room and whatnot. You've got an excellent all-around room that deserves major credit. So kudos to Acora, VAC, and obviously Jacques with Oracle. Hadn't seen him in a long time. I've never met him, but Oracle you don't often see, and he hadn't given a presentation in many years, he told me, and that was a great job by him. So thumbs up, great meeting him. Another one that obviously always one of my favorites, if not the favorite, is MBL Room. And we went in there time and time again. They played late night. It had Charles dancing at one point, the analog tapes from the new deck. That's a little less expensive than the reference one that Greg does from United Home Audio. That's a killer piece. If you're into analog tape, you got to get a United Home Audio deck at some point. That guy's great. And they make the show so much fun. Jeremy always does a good job setting up the MBLs, and those 101Es delivered. People were consistently in that room, bobbing their head, enjoying whatever tune was played. Kudos to them for picking real music, and that's where I heard the Ghost of Tom Joad, my favorite track that I heard there. But they played all kinds of stuff. I didn't see a lot of people leaving quickly from that room. Many people stayed a long time in that room. So that's another subliminal cue telling you they were doing something right, as always. So another best of show for MBL. Another one that it was in a room that probably wasn't conducive, the Focal Maestro Utopias and the name Statement Gear. You would think that they would have had one of those big rooms, but we went there before the show really started. We were like the first people in the room and had, you know, free reign before it even started. And when you don't have the noise floor and crowded, then they could play it at a lower level, commensurate with not overloading the room. You were still able to enjoy the pedigree of that gear and the qualities, and sense the potential in a louder volume, bigger room. So kudos, that was beautiful gear from Name, and those Focal Maestro Utopias are definitely reference level for a lot of people's tastes. Another one, always impressive, but met the expectations again this time, if not exceeded them, was Margulis. And again, I usually do a walkthrough. He does a great walkthrough of his gear, explaining the technology, what he does, why you can touch the tubes in those Margulis amps and not burn your hands, and what he values, going into detail of his designs. This is a very innovative company that still offers products at a reasonable price point, family owned, everything about that company you want to support. I haven't owned a piece yet, but I think one of my friends who I often feature on the channel was looking at buying one of their integrated amps, which is a great value. Their power conditioner was very intriguing to me, at DC blocking potential, which often you don't see in power conditioners, which can be valuable. So again, kudos to them. And they're building a server now too. The aesthetics, you don't sacrifice aesthetics because of the price tag. And then pairing them with the Ridos, which are very detailed speakers and can really deliver the bass. Again, they play that jazz variant track a lot in that room. Kudos, sounded great. So they met my expectations, if not exceeded it again. Get another Best of Show award from me. There's so many other rooms that met my expectations and delivered high quality sound, but those are the ones that jump out to me. What I kind of wanted to do now is just give some honorable mention awards to things that I didn't get a chance to sit in the sweet spot or spend a lot of time hearing, but I heard enough and my intuition is enough that I want to give recognition, or they were intriguing in their design or aesthetics or something like that. And so one room that stood out to me, that Avant-Garde, their new duo that was in that room, is now they have an active version that you can switch on or off. That was cool. The fact that now you're going to have the powered version. If you don't want a whole lot of amps and all kinds of clutter, you have a condo, you have limited space, you want those speakers to be the showcase, plug them in, and you're ready to go pretty much with a source. That's cool, and could be very game-changing for a lot of people, putting them in now the market for Avant-Gardes. And sound quality seemed pretty good. The guy from House of Stereo seems to do a really good job with setup of his rooms. I think I remarked about that with several rooms that he had. So take a look at those videos to learn a little bit more. I just wanted to give them thumbs up and honorable mention. The other thing was just 2 cable lines, other than the one in the High End by Oz room. I was intrigued by that M101 cable. I mean, it's very pricey, but it's cool looking. And the cable elevators, if you're going to go with those things, I'm not a big believer in those. But if you're going to do them, that was really cool looking. Fit the whole aesthetic vibe. And that's why I would do cable elevators, to be honest, is for aesthetics. That was cool. So if price no object is your, the playground for you, those cables may be something to look at. They're very similar to the In-Acoustic, which I really like in terms of design and aesthetic. So that might be one to kind of consider. The other one that, although I am going to probably be visiting In-Acoustic, and their pedigree and facility that I've done a little more research on, is still probably my favorite cable line. But anyway, just to let you guys know what else is out there, the M101 cables seem to be very similar. The other one was this Via Blue that was in the Arate room. The speakers from, I think, Lithuania. Charles Kiermus really liked those bookshelf speakers in that room. But what I tended to gravitate to was those cables. They're unique connectors that they make themselves. It's not just, OEM wire with Furatech connectors and then a big markup. They're doing their own stuff. And you had the choice of the jacketing, a lot of customization. And the price wasn't that bad. In fact, there is a discount, 20% discount, show discount. So that, to me, I'm not a big believer in spending a ton of money on cables, but from a standpoint of quality of connectors, customization, the ability to not be just OEM with, Furatech connectors on the end. Just want to give a shout out to them on the accessories and tweak side. I really don't have anything else in the accessories or tweak side that I noticed new or innovative or anything. I do have that grounding box I got to eventually get to. So trying to get all this content out to you guys, plus more stuff on the box coming soon. Tons of stuff. And then I'm going to visit Edgar at Princeton for the Bach. Then we got Expona. So much to do. But hopefully you enjoyed this coverage. That'll pretty much wrap it up for now, other than the music clips I'll give you from the show from Doug in the near future. So if you haven't joined, sign up, subscribe, and I'll see you back here soon.